Hello there, fellow game creators. Do you want your game to have multiplayer features? And do you want them to be integrated with ease? Worry not, because I will show you how you can do it with the Epic Online Services Integration Kit. We will create an example project for Unreal Engine version 5.3 using the EIK plugin to implement online functionality. We will use the third-person template as our starting point, and we will name our project EIK_example. Additionally, for this example project, we will also incorporate the Epic Common UI plugin. Therefore, we will need to perform some initial setup for it. Open the Plugins tab in the Edit menu bar and search for the Common UI plugin. Enable it. Additionally, I will enable plugins that I use to enhance working with blueprints, such as Blueprints Assist and Electronic Nodes. While these plugins are not necessary for the project, they provide a smoother and more visually appealing blueprint workflow. Please note that both of these plugins are paid, but if they are on a 50% sale, it's a good opportunity to acquire them if you find them to your liking. Please restart your editor so that the Common UI plugin can function properly. I will change the editor preference settings so that when opening any editor file, it will open inside the main window rather than in a separate window. Additionally, in the Play preferences, I will add a launch parameter to display logs when starting the game in standalone mode. I will close the editor and add my compiled EIK plugin to my project. However, if you have the Marketplace version, you can skip this step and simply enable it in the plugins. The example project should work with any version of the plugin that is 3 or newer, but at the time of recording, version 3.2 was used to create this project. I have a video on this channel that explains how to build the EIK from source if you decide to use the GitHub version. First, before we jump setting up EIK plugin, we need to do some initial setup for Common UI plugin so it could function properly. In project settings, search for Viewport and change it to Common Game Viewport Client. Please restart the editor as prompted. During this project setup stage, there will be a lot of work involved in the setup process. However, we will get to the fun part later. As they say, a good start is half of the work done. To save some work, we will import the common input data setup from the Lyra example project. Lyra is a free project on the marketplace that offers free assets which can be used in projects created with Unreal Engine. Upon acquiring Lyra, it will be added to your vault. Create a new Lyra project and open it. Navigate to the UI folder and search for the Platforms folder. It contains input data setup for some of the most common game paths. These data assets will save us a lot of time by avoiding the need to input all this data ourselves. The Common UI plugin helps with switching input icons on the screen to correspond with the used controller. However, that won't be our main focus for this project. We will be using Common UI to build our standardized UI visuals and utilize its plugin UI layering system. We may return to the input functionality at a later time. To migrate all this data to our project, select the Platforms folder and look for the Migrate option. This will migrate all those files to our project. Select our project's content folder as the destination to migrate the assets. In my case, I encountered an error. However, after checking, it seems that all the files were migrated correctly. You might not encounter such an error, as I did not encounter it the first time I performed the migration. You can close the Lyra project. We will tidy up by moving the Platforms folder to the Data folder. We can delete Foundation folder. In the Data folder, we need to create a data table. Right-click in the context window and look for Miscellaneous and then Data Table. The data table should be created for the Common Input Action database. Name it DT_input actions. In this data table, we need to add 2 rows, one for confirm and one for cancel, and name the display names correspondingly. For the cancel row, we need to set our cancel button, which is the escape key in this case. I understand that setting up the Common UI can take some time, but once it's done, we can proceed with setting up EOS and the login screen. We need to do one more thing. We need to create the Common UI input data and name it correspondingly as Common Input Data. Please open the created input data and close the blueprint graph, as we only need the property editor at the moment. In the properties, set the default click action and default back action. Select our created data table and the corresponding input. Don't forget to compile and save your changes before proceeding. Now, for the last step, we need to set our common input data in the project settings for common input settings. Finally, we have completed the general common UI setup. Now, let's move on to setting up the EIK plugin. First, let's use the automatic EIK setup feature, which will add the EIK setup data to our project's default engine ini file. This feature requires an editor restart, so please do so. Now, we need to set up the EIK plugin with our product data from Epic's dashboard. If you don't have an Epic Dev account, please visit dev.epicgames.com and create one. There are a few Betide Studio setup videos for EIK available, but I believe I will go through the setup process myself to maintain continuity. If you do not have a dev account, you will be prompted to create your organization. Please do so, as it should be a straightforward process. Additionally, create your product within the organization. In the EIK settings, we can fill in our organization name and product name, which will allow us to easily access the dashboard using the EIK button in the editor. I will use my created example project to showcase the general setup for a peer-to-peer client. First, we navigate to the product settings, specifically the Clients section, and add a new policy. We create a custom policy that grants mostly all accesses for peer-to-peer clients. We select User Required to enable the ability to add corresponding policies. As you develop your game, you can modify these settings to allow or restrict client access to specific policies. However, I did not enable the ability for clients to list files in title storage, as I don't believe it will be necessary. Now that we have the client policy, let's create a client and assign it the appropriate policies. Name the client as you wish and add our previously created client policy to it. Now, we need to fill the product data from the product settings to the EIK plugin settings. Please navigate to the project settings and then to the EOS Integration Kit settings. We can close the settings that we do not intend to use for now. To ensure that our project works properly with EOS, we need to set up the artifacts correctly. Let's name our default artifact Client and ensure that the artifact names match accordingly. Now, we simply need to copy all the IDs from the dashboard to the EIK settings. Copy the client ID to the client ID field, the client secret to the client secret field, and so on. Just make sure that if you have multiple clients, you copy the IDs from the correct client. For the encryption key, search for a hex generator and generate a 64-digit length hex key. We are almost done with the EIK setup, but there is one more step we need to take in the Epic dashboard. We need to select Epic Account Services for our product and configure the account services. If you don't see the Epic Account Services application, you will need to create one. Once you have an Epic Account Services application, you need to link the client we created to it. In the Permissions section, enable online presence and friend permissions. However, please note that it's advisable not to enable country as it can cause potential issues. Now that we are done with the EIK setup, if you're using EIK 3.2 plugin, it comes with its own example project that I heavily relied on in the past when I was learning EIK. We can use this example project to test if our EIK setup is working correctly. To begin, open the login map and launch it. As you can see, EIK provides a variety of methods for login, some of which may require additional configurations. In order to test if we have set up everything correctly, we can use the account portal. This will help us verify that our setup is functioning properly. Also notice a pop-up message indicating that the application is unverified when attempting to log in. This message will persist until you verify your application. I may create a video tutorial on this topic at a later time. For now, refer to the EOS documentation for more guidance. Please click on the Allow button, and EOS should log you in successfully. Since we don't have a loading screen set up, it may appear as though nothing is happening, but the menu map will load shortly. We can add a loading screen at a later time to enhance the user experience. The plan for this tutorial series is essentially to recreate what Betide Studio did from scratch, but also to showcase even more features beyond what the example project provided with EIK 3.2 offers. Additionally, we will be using Epic Common UI for added flexibility in the future. Let's switch back to the third-person map so that we can delete the plugin example project. This will prevent any interference with maps, widgets, and unnecessary duplicated assets that we don't need for our project.